All right. Welcome back to Grimerica Outlawed. We have Michael Wann back in the house. He's the Matrix Mind Magic Decoder, the Synchromystic Susquanian Natural Astrologer. His some of his work is at MikWan, that's MIKWAN.gumroad.com, and his YouTube is at Susquana Alchemy. Susquehanna.
Susquehanna.
I keep getting that syllable mixed up there. Susquehanna Alchemy. And is there any other links you want me to mention right up front here, or?
The YouTube is probably the best one for current content, and then the Gumroad is a course, which maybe we'll talk a little bit about on the back end of our conversation tonight.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you kind of intrigued me. It's been a while. We wanted to see where you're at too and what you've been up to, but definitely if you've been doing some sort of synchromystic decoding on the current events, I mean, we're always blown away by everything that's happening these days, and I'm trying not to get dragged in emotionally with stuff. So where do you want to start? Do you want to start with kind of like some current events, symbolism type stuff, or is that getting too deep?
Well, actually, no, let's I like to lay the foundation, or at least the foundation which I stand upon, because you made a very good point about not wanting to become emotionally drawn into the stuff, but then at the same time, like it's magnetizing, like it pulls you in. And so I always like to remind whenever I do a presentation is like, well, the foundation is, this is a big old friggin' mystery. Like what you call it, a mystery or a dream. Like we don't know where this place is. Like there's lots of stories. I don't know what being alive is, but I know that I'm here. I know that I'm linked to this body. And outside of that, there's nothing really, you can't get too certain. And that can be a little bit unnerving for a lot of people, understandably. And that's why the desire is to come up with a story, whether it's like, something really out there, like, the religious story or the scientific story. But if you have the courage to accept the fact that it is a mystery and that we don't know that answer, it allows you to explore a lot of this information and a lot of what's being presented before us. One, without limiting it to like, well, this means this. And then by not limiting it, you're also opening it up to, well, there's a whole lot more that what this could point to. I mean, it's the whole sort of, what is it called? The Schrodinger's cat. Like, we haven't opened it up. If we don't need to answer a question, well, then I think that we shouldn't have to answer it, or it's beneficial not to. So I'm going to go into a lot of detail with some of the events that have unfolded. But keep in mind that the story, because I will present it in a story form, it's still based upon the fact that we don't know what the hell this place is. We don't know what this place is. And if you can hold that, well, then it becomes a whole lot easier to navigate it, just as you said, without that emotional charge, because it certainly seems that whoever the orchestrators are, I don't know who they are, they really want you to get emotionally charged. But if you can do it without the emotional charge, well, then something else happens.
They want you on one side or the other. I mean, a friend of mine, just for one of the main things you're going to talk about tonight, one of my friends asked me what I thought happened, and I'm like, I really don't know. I mean, I really don't know what happened that night. I'm getting sort of conflicting reports and evidence and stuff. So I really don't know. So, but they really want us to pick a side. I mean, in some topics, if you don't pick a side, that's considered, like, neutrality is actually considered, what do they call it?
Offensive?
Yeah.
It's, and I think that's a really valid point. When you like, and what kind of like supports that, whenever there is like a really outwardly understood dictatorship in terms of a government, one of the things which seems to always be important in those dictatorships is that there's 100% turnout in the vote. Like, we need to get you involved with this. That's definitely part of the way that the matrix is maintained, is to get people involved within it. So to be able to, and then the flip side would be for the people who want to completely ignore it. But if you can find that space between, I'm paying attention, if I don't have to make that decision, I'm not going to. And that's why I think grammar or the way we use language is so important, because we can be very clear, like, this is what I know is what's been presented to me. And I also know that these are theories that have been presented to me. But if I don't necessarily have to go and decide and choose, well, then that's a really solid ground when going into this fun house.
You're muted, G.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah, Darren and I were talking about on one of our roundups, because we were bringing up some of the synchro. I guess you call it synchromystic symbolism with Charlie Kirk's thing, and we're like, how is this even possible? Like from a human perspective, like it really feels like some of the stuff is just beyond our capability, or to orchestrate. Some of this stuff seems like it's orchestrated at a higher level than we can even imagine.
Yeah. So, should we like start to lean in on this?
Yeah.
So I want to, the background I'd like to give is, just from my own sort of like journey as a guy who likes to share stories online. I'll go in waves, and sometimes I'll get like really into a topic, and then I'll put out a lot of content, then I'll disappear for a little bit. And it's for a variety of reasons. And I had, for the most part, been like maybe disappeared for the past year or so, maybe putting out a couple things here and there, but most of it was the content I had been putting out had been like immensely personal, like telling the stories of what I've been doing and how it's been like all synchromistic. So that being said, this summer, I started to get back into the swing again. Of looking at public stories from like this narrative or storytelling perspective. And where I was first drawn in was this year's Burning Man. All right, that's where this really the Charlie Kirk or Charlie Church, I just like to call it that. It depersonalizes it. Where the rubber first meets the road. So before I get into that, is there like any thoughts?
Yeah. What about
like the Burning Man, or like opinions?
No, what about the floods? Because I've been looking forward to talking to you about this, like what you call, occulted rituals.
Oh, fudge. I forgot that I did the floods too. Like, I mean, it's all kind of blending in. So yes, so a lot of what I had been doing over the past 2 years, I participated in something which I called a River and Stars cosmic sort of ceremony, where I was taking, really inspired by a book which was called A Story Waiting to Pierce You, where I took, not by myself, but with a bunch of other people as well, water from the Susquehanna River, and going to different places on the Susquehanna River, and then going to other rivers that correspond both geologically, historically to it, and then more what's called water weaving, like blending the water, and then on a starboard, which is like a tool which I invented, which is a way to reflect down where all of the celestial bodies are in a given moment in the sky, replicating it on the ground, like an as above, so below, river and stars sort of thing. And there was just like a drive to do that from this book. As I said, The Story Waiting to Pierce You, because it spoke to me in very personal ways. I'm like, well, I ain't got nothing else going on, and this seems to be more real than anything else which is happening. So I did that, and that took place. What was it? Maybe 2024. It began at the whatever they call it, the Great American Eclipse. I think it was 2024.
Yeah, that was April. I think
April 4th or April 8th. It was April 8th. So after completing that, like the completion of that was Asheville, North Carolina, on the French Broad River. And then if you recall the whole Asheville, what happened in Asheville from the hurricane and the floods, and then I like started getting deep into like cause and effect. Like, I'm not exactly saying that like there is a direct correlation between what I had participated in, but the intention from the very beginning, which came from this book, which was to consecrate the land for a new destiny, without any definition of what consecrating would be or what a new destiny was, is like, all right, well, this makes as much sense to me as anything else. And then to start to see these, like, these events. So I went into the Asheville thing, and that was really interesting. It was a year ago. I didn't remember the details, but that got really deep into like the UN and climate change and what was at Asheville, all this sort of stuff. And then the flooding in Texas happened. So that might have been like 9 months later. And there were other connections. There were other connections which really tied in personally to both me being like in Austin, because it was outside of Austin, with rivers, and then also particularly as it relates to the eclipse, because where it took place, like, so I began that River and Stars thing on the eclipse, very, very specifically at a very specific location, selected for its eclipse on the river. And there was a NASA event held where that big Texas flood, where all the people were drowned. And so that was like the connection point. Like, I had already started this process of linking in this River and Stars event and some sort of cause and effect and rivers and floods and all of this. And then it happened again in Texas. And admittedly, like, a lot of people did not like to hear this sort of stuff because they're emotionally tied to it. Like, they got pissed off because they're like, are you trying to imply that you caused it? I'm like, no, I'm not trying to imply that. Or you can't talk about stuff like this because like young people died and like you're not being sensitive. I'm like, yeah, that's true. But, people are dying all the time and I'm not trying to be insensitive. And obviously if it was a loved one of mine, like I get it, but like, this is the world we live in. Like, we're all now commentators. So it's like, that's what social media was. But if you could begin to like get past that and you looked at the data points, which I brought up, like it's again, like, as I said, I'm not certain what this place is. I do a very conscious effort of understanding the principles of how this realm works. And then I'm very, like, very scientific in terms of like, I'm always like capturing data and testing hypotheses and analysis, but in this very kind of like synchromystic way. And you're absolutely right. I forgot. That's when what's really going to lead to Charlie Church. It began with the telling of the story of the floods in Texas and tying it into like whatever that weird Katy Perry Blue Origin thing is. Like, I can't recall off the top of my head right now those details, but it was just like, there's so much there that it's just, I mean, that's part of the way this realm works, is like everything is connected. And if you're clever enough, or if you pay enough attention to details, you can see that connectivity. And so I began this summer with that.
I forgot all about that Blue Origin thing where they couldn't even hide their scripted videography from everybody. I mean, unless it was all meant to be. But even then, that is so weird that they would even just allow that out to go viral.
Exactly. And that's like one of those things. It's like, well, you can't necessarily go and say, like, oh, they meant to be it, or this was a mistake. Look how sloppy they are. All you could say is like, this happened and this is ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. So what happened to Burning Man then?
All right. So really the previous, and we're getting to it. You know what the Day of the Dead is?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're coming up to it. So the Day of the Dead kind of corresponds with like Halloween or Samhain. And what it really comes back to is the recognition of the sun's like cycle. And so the sun cycle is understood from us on Earth, whatever the hell the sun is, whatever the hell the Earth is. What we do know is it's a predictable cycle, and it's a circle. So there's no beginning or end, but the parts which are identifiable are the equinoxes and the solstices. And then there are midpoints between the equinoxes and the solstices. And these midpoints are, they're the traditional holy days or holidays of the cultures which they told us came before us. So Samhain is one of those. It's a Samhain or Day of the Dead or Halloween. And it's linked to the midpoint between the autumnal equinox and the winter solstice. And what is tied into that is the story, which is this is when the veil between the living and the dead is the thinnest. Like, that's the story. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'll play with it. And I certainly know it's culturally true. I know that we're culturally kind of down with that. So 3 years ago, I had the weirdest experience on the Day of the Dead. And the only human being who would know it would be me. And so this to me is what I think is like one of the indications of what it's like to be here in this realm, is this relationship each of us has with the whole. Whether you want to call that God, whether you want to call it the universe, or whether you think this is all a computer simulation and that's the primary algorithm, I don't know. But I think it is pretty clear that there is a supreme intelligence. And each of us has this capability of having this conversation with this supreme intelligence. And when you're really having a good conversation with it, you're the only one who cares. Because as you try to go and explain it, like you have this like feedback and you're like, oh, you're not going to believe what happened and this, and you tell it to someone else and like, I don't give a fuck. And so like I had one of those, and it was the Day of the Dead, and it had to do with like dead, all this sort of stuff. And then suddenly this idea of the Day of the Dead being like just a general narrative, which I know is connected to the other side, like it got real for me. All right. 1 year later goes by. Like I had that in the back of my mind, and I'm like, yeah, broken clock is what is right like once a day, right? Like I'm skeptical as can be. So I'm thinking that next year what happens is Day of the Dead happens again. I'm in a different part of the world. The first one was down in St. Petersburg, Florida, and now I'm in Austin, Texas. And another really strange thing happens. Without getting into the detail, it had to do with this guy who I did not know at all, but through someone who I knew, who knew him, that it was immensely like connected. This guy was murdered. And she was like, will you reach out to my nephew who is best friends with this murdered guy and just like console him? Because I know you just have a way with people, particularly as it relates to like heaviness and maybe like a bigger perspective. I'm like, I guess, that's not really my bread and butter, but this was someone who I really value in my life, and they have done a lot of things for me. So when they asked a favor, I'm like, okay. So it turns out this person who dies was really instrumental in the infrastructure of Burning Man. Like I've never been to Burning Man. I know a lot of people who have. I know what that the people who are part of the Burning Man culture, like where they put it in their value systems. I've studied it a lot. So I'm not exactly like, no, I'm not involved with it, but I'm also not exactly like a greenhorn. I've got a little bit of experience. And so this guy was like a big part of it, I guess, is like the bicycle scene. And this guy ran the bicycle program throughout Burning Man. He came early, stayed late. He's been doing it for a long time. And this guy was friggin' beloved. Like when he died and I saw the obituary, and literally thousands of people came to go see him. Like this guy was like, he was a special human being. And he died just like a line from the Johnny Cash song, what's it called? Folsom Prison Blues. You know the song Folsom Prison Blues? If you heard it, you'd probably recognize it. It's an immensely famous song, and it's got this lyrics that says, "I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die." And that lyric's been in my head for 20 years because I'm always like, what does that even mean? Like, why? Like, who is the human being? I put a lot of emotional energy into it. So when I got this call on the Day of the Dead, the second year on the Day of the Dead that I have this bleed through with like the death, where this guy was murdered in Reno and he was shot in the head for a completely senseless reason. Not that any murder isn't senseless, but like if you're being robbed or if you're in a fight, like this was senseless. There was no need for it to happen. Like, and I was in the Music City Capital, all sorts of stuff. So I'm like, I got into Burning Man. I started like, I put a lot of energy into getting into like Burning Man. This was a year ago. So now Burning Man comes back around. And the reason why I'm giving this much background is because when we begin to like look at how life unfolds and how these narratives unfolds, is we need to see like the continuity, or the continuity really adds to it, I suppose. So that being said, this year's Burning Man comes around and I'm aware, like it's kind of like it's in my mind. And what I'm really, one of the things which I am aware of with Burning Man is that, one, it is an immensely high concentration of some of the most creative people on earth. Two, there's a shitload of drugs going on. Three, they are in the wilderness. They're in the desert. Like all of these things that four, like a lot of understanding of esoteric, magical, occultic practices are built in there. Like this is like five. This is directly connected to technology, Silicon Valley, all of that. Like I know these ingredients. I understand enough about like esoteric ritual and culture and all that sort of stuff that I'm like, this is highly, whether an individual who goes there is consciously aware of what they're participating in or not, like I know it's a container, and I know it
there's
is.
There's also the part that you might appreciate about it too, the disassociation from our matrix right now, like the free economy kind of thing, like that sort of operating outside of our system, right?
Yeah, like it is literally like it's almost like a playground. So we're going to take off the shackles of all these people. Like one of the things which I've noticed from friends of mine who I know who Burning Man is like, that is their thing, is that I think it lasts like 9 days or something. The other 356 days of the year are like they don't count. Like the only things that matter are those 9 days. Like that's something I've seen many times. Like I know it's that impactful for those individuals. And I believe one of the reasons is like just what you're saying. It's like, you get to come out of the prison and we're going to let you do all this sort of stuff. And if you actually looked at it, like there's always been like this agreement, like before cannabis became legal, like back when it was still demonized, like there was an understanding, like we're going to take 70,000 of the biggest drug users on the planet, and we're going to let them do whatever the fuck we want. And like, yeah, we might arrest a couple of them, but
is that potentially, could that backfire potentially? Like did putting aside even the occultism of it and the kind of I think what you're saying is it's almost like a controlled op type setup thing, but could that backfire though? I mean,
what do you mean by backfire?
Like spin out a bunch of things that are very healthy for the world, or that might work against the matrix itself. I mean, when you kind of like, that seems to me like it's a recipe for an unconscious, or not even unconscious, but so like, let's say you put those 70,000 creative people in this like sort of freedom-y type environment, and they also have a lot of them important jobs in tech or whatever kind of in the industry. Like, isn't there a chance that spins out into something that works against the matrix in the end? I mean, like, so for example, like look at I don't even want to say this, but I mean, look at the tech bros and Trump right now, right? I mean, could that be something that backfired out of something like that? Because they're fighting. It's whether it's real or not. I'm not saying it's real. I'm not saying anything by it, but for all appearances, they're fighting against the liberal rules order, which is falling apart. I mean, and whether it might be all orchestrated, whatever, but it does seem like there's a shift in the power paradigm with creative, technical people.
So I think that's a great question, and this is how my initial response is like, well, again, like I don't even know what any of this place is. And I don't know who's really behind the purpose of Burning Man. And it could be very possible. Like that's a storyline about like, the white hats and the black hats.
Yeah.
So like that could be totally true. What I can say though, for certain is that when you get into a lot of like when you read about the values of the individuals that are said to like create the matrix, like, the robber barons and like the people who do that, there is an immense value of taking risk. Like, I can't think, it's on the tip of my tongue right now, the saying, but there's, how the universe rewards the person who takes a risk. Like that is a principle. And so the idea that there's a risk for something like that, well, that seems to fit, that goes hand in hand with it. That's where the excitement, like something comes alive with that excitement.
Right.
So, I mean, that's a possibility. I don't know, but yeah, you're right. But I'll also say that there are also probably enough safety nets that are built in, that if you are trying to steer the unfoldment of life in this realm, that you could probably capture if something isn't going the way you want it to. I mean, that's probably a possibility as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's certainly fair.
All right, so let's get back to your.
All right, so I'm aware that Burning Man's coming up, and I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, like it's a 5. I'm not that into it, but I know that's a thing. But then I saw the article that said Burning Man has its first homicide ever, and now it's speaking my language. Because one of the compass points, which I like to use to like navigate meaning in the synchromistic interpretation, is firsts. Like firsts are always important. So as soon as I hear a first, or this is where a first thing happened, like it captures my attention. So that like immediately pulls me in. So I'm not saying this is the first murder. This is just it's definitely not the first death. But it's at least the first publicly expressed murder, that homicide that came around with Burning Man. And it came with a tension. And what the tension is like, we don't know who did this, and we don't know who the person was who was murdered. So like that's part of it. We talked about this in the beginning of the tweaking of the emotionality. The majority of mainstream reality isn't paying attention to Burning Man. But what I will say is like the people who are part of Burning Man culture, like this was probably a pretty big deal. And this is coming on the heels of what I saw as a really, really strange murder from an infrastructure person from Burning Man from the previous year. So like a lot of
I thought you were going to say it was about that same guy.
Well, I did a video about it, and there's a lot of parallels. There's definitely a lot of parallels. And like, if we had 24 hours,
he was a murder, right? So
yeah, that was definitely a murder. So I began looking at this year's Burning Man, and I'm just going to pull out like some of the key things. So they said it was the first murder. And then the very beginning of Burning Man, they said it was the first birth. And they called it a cryptic birth. Said the lady didn't know she was pregnant. She thought she had bad food poisoning, and then out pops a baby. Luckily, right next door to her was like a ER nurse and someone else, and they gave birth to the baby. And this couple's from Salt Lake City. So I'm looking at this. I'm like, all right, we got Alpha and Omega right there. So that right there is kind of involved. I'm just like kind of like pulling in the pieces. And then, I'm looking at it, what was going on in the news right around that same time. Like, so this is like mid and early August. So this is before this year's Burning Man. So here are a couple things that are interesting. Was one, the head of BlackRock, the financial institution that owns everything, he is put in as the interim head of the World Economic Forum. Right. And so Burning Man takes place at Black Rock City. So like we're beginning to play with the same sort of thing. I personally don't believe that Klaus Schwab's a real person. I think this is all part of this like Dr. Evil Hollywood like mind stuff, because it's just too ridiculous. Maybe he's real, maybe not. I don't know. But that's at least been my take. And so when I see BlackRock and the guy takes over Klaus Schwab, so I'm like, all right, that's kind of interesting. And then, so that was building up into it. And there was also, if you recall, this was a big story in the United States. I don't know how big it was outside of the United States, but there was this like really beautiful young Ukrainian girl who was horribly stabbed in the neck, like in Charlotte, North Carolina. That was like a week before. And then a week before it, there was a shooting at a Catholic school in Minneapolis by a trans woman. And there was a lot of and it got real kind of like crazy, because they were saying like, we're going to take away the rights of trans people to have guns. And now all of the Second Amendment folks are confused because they don't know what to do right now, because now they got to support the trans people. And now the trans people are now fighting for like Second Amendment rights. So there's all of this like mental confusion, which was happening. All of this is like in the backdrop of the collective mind. So all of this is going on. And so now and then in the astrological world, right in the middle of this, on August 29th, it was said, and we're going to come back to this, but I'm just going to mention it right now, is that Pluto is going out of bounds. All right.
What's that mean, out of bounds?
That's why we're going to have to come back to it, because, and that to me is what I think what makes the most amount of sense of someone who is who's fluent in astrology, who's fluent in conspiracy, who's fluent in like secret ritual. Like, this is what it's about. This is what all of this shit I think is really about. But we're going to come back to that. That's right in the middle of it. So that happens on the 29th. The next day, the guy dies or is murdered. And it says that his murder happened 15 minutes after the burning of the effigy. Now, Burning Man is also tied to these ancient sort of like these cultural sort of what we would call like a pagan rite, like what Samhain would be, or Beltane or something like that. So we've got that. And the one thing which they did say about this guy was that his throat was slit. He was found in a pool of blood. So now we've got the Ukrainian who got like stabbed in the neck. And now we got this guy who was like gruesomely found in a pool of blood, and his neck was cut. And then it comes out that this guy was a Russian national. Like eventually, like a week later, they go and they announce who this guy is. So now we've got the Ukrainians involved. We've got the Russians involved. The week before this, Trump is meeting with Putin, and he met with like the Ukrainian guy, like all of the same, like these are touch points. So if you can imagine, like you're a typical person, this is what the occultic rituals are about, is they want to tap in and massage like kind of like the subconscious, like not what the typical mind is like aware of, but what's just kind of in the background noise. This is what a subliminal advertisement is. All this stuff is going on. So I was making these videos. I'm talking about all this sort of stuff, and then bam, Charlie Church happens. And all of this stuff, which I had been talking about, then suddenly is kind of like pushed to the side. And the Charlie Church sort of emotional tidal wave comes out. So I'm going to pause right now and give you guys an opportunity to like comment or question about anything as it relates to like all of those Burning Man points.
This is well. I'm surprised that no one got killed at Burning Man before. There must have been deaths at Burning.
Oh yeah, there's definitely deaths.
Nothing suspicious. No suspicious sort of deaths.
Well, they say that there was no homicide, so that's like the
No
grammar
murders.
which is being used. I would say one of the most well-known deaths, particularly in from a conspiratorial perspective. And the author's name is escaping me right now, but you could probably do a quick search. This dude who wrote all these books in the 90s about mind control. I think he wrote like 3 or 4 books. Like he died. He supposedly like got an injury at Burning Man, and then 3 days afterwards he got like an infection and died, and everyone thought that he was murdered because of all of his books on mind control. Some of the best, like the books that really helped me first understand like how the whole game works. Like that's a pretty well publicized death from Burning Man. I want to say a handful of years ago, like someone ran into the burning effigy, and like, you know, the story is like he killed himself. Like, so there's definitely deaths. Well, this one was different. This was a homicide.
And it was sort of publicized. So,
yes.
Yeah.
It was tweaked, and they kept in every article, it was like found in a pool of blood. That was the phrase they used, a pool of blood, which is like, it has biblical implications, that phrase, particularly from the book of Revelations, which, you know, is what I think this is all kind of like trying to add into the collective consciousness, is this like creating and holding in one's consciousness this like, well, this is it. This is the time of the apocalypse. You know, it's hitting it's ticking all the marks.
Shelley says, is it, and I was going to mention McGowan. Is it David McGowan? No.
Yes. David McGowan.
Wow.
He died. His death is attributed from an injury that happened in Burning Man.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow, there was somebody else that was like the last Union of the Unwanted I was at. Wheezy was there, and he's a huge David McGowan researcher. He was talking about McGowan quite a bit.
That dude is awesome. I love, like, particularly all of his Laurel Canyon work.
Yeah. And Buddy ran into the fire a few years ago, right? In 2017, Buddy.
Yeah, like that. I remember that as a story. Like, I've been following like the burning, like it's been on my periphery because I know it is such a potent container.
It says that, so I wonder if it says 2024, there was a death on opening day that is still under investigation. Oh, it says update it. Found dead, Burning Man unresponsive. Doesn't say though. Doesn't say what happened.
Yeah. I mean, you'd think with all the sort of.
Oh yeah, I'm surprised people aren't getting like killed all the time. People just tweaking out and just like freaking out, maybe choking someone out with a pillow or something like that. Yeah.
Just choking someone out with a pillow.
More pillow deaths than anywhere else.
That's right.
All right, let me see. All right. Am I able to pull up something and show it?
Yeah, sure.
How do I do that?
There should be a plus little screen icon in the mid bottom.
There's let me try this one.
You click on that, share screen.
No, that's not it. Let me see if this works.
We should have
studio chat. No.
Bottom middle. There should be a plus.
Oh, there it is. I got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Slides, PDFs, image file, share screen. Let me try that one. Window. All right, here we go.
There we go.
Okay, you see this right here? So this is up?
Yep.
So are we ready to transition to Charlie Church?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. And so how do I want to go and position this? It is my understanding how this works. So what's happening is, like, not only is it important to get eyeballs or observation on whatever is happening in the mainstream. It's important to get emotion, and it's important to get thought. And ultimately, like, let's just call it energy for lack of a better word. They call it loosh sometimes. All of this loosh goes somewhere. And so what I'm going to go and demonstrate now is how there was like all of this kind of like other corresponding events, which also had a lot of emotionality tied to it, but not nearly the Charlie Church stuff. So this is a little map right here where I'm going to just tie in where we can see all of these stories that are seemingly like disconnected. But if we can imagine them as from subconscious or subliminal sort of interconnection, that all of the loosh, all of this emotional energy is being cascaded together. All right. So we got in the center right here, we've got Charlie Church, shot right outside of Salt Lake City. And the story is that that this guy, Tyler Robinson, who himself is not a trans man, but he's in a relationship with a trans woman, let's say. And also, what's been pointed out from the very beginning, particularly from people who've been interested in this, is the fact that Tyler has a very, very significant Freemasonic connotation. It's a double entendre, if you will.
Okay.
All right. So now so this is a web. So the web means is like there's not necessarily a starting point. We just got to jump right in, and then we're just going to go and kind of go around the web. So the Catholic school shooting, this happened on 8/27. This is the same day as the crypto birth that happened from the couple from Salt Lake City. It was in Minneapolis, and that school just also happened to be founded on September 10th, though 102 years earlier. And this shooter's name is Robin Westman. So this shooter is Tyler Robinson, and we've got this Robin connection. Okay. We could go back. We could go deep into the Robin, but we'll just like recognize that is a phonetic link. It's a phonetic link, whether it's Robin and Steelin, whether it's a Robin bird. We don't necessarily need to go there right now. And Robin Westman is a trans woman. So now we've got another trans connection. And most interestingly is Robin Westman is another name embedded within it has a very strong Masonic implication.
Well, West man even is a pretty important word, right? Man of the West, West man.
Exactly. So the Tyler, so Tyler refers to the officer who guards the door of the lodge. And then the West man, it's not quite as like direct, but it's a strong connection. The senior warden, who I believe is like the second highest rank within a lodge, is considered the guardian of the West Gate. So the East is really significant. That's why they've got like the Eastern Star and everything rises in the East and the Star of Bethlehem and all of that. And then the West represents like darkness and ignorance and all that other sort of stuff. And this guy, the senior warden, who is the West man, he guards the West. And so perhaps that's a little bit of a well, first off, the Tyler, the guard, and the senior warden, they are connected in terms of like their role within the lodge. Keep in mind, I'm not a Freemason. I'm just like reading the stuff which is readily available on the internet. And the West Gate is associated with water and the element, water as an element, and the direction of the West are correspondence. Like, as you know, most things in occultic traditions and esoteric traditions has to do with correspondences, because this realm works on resonance and entrainment. So Westgate is water, and this takes place. The shooting was in Minneapolis, and Minneapolis is the city of water. And we can begin to start to see shape is beginning to take form. So now we're going to go down. We've got this Minneapolis connection, and then we've got George Floyd, right? And that was probably like 4 years ago. When was that? That was 2020, I believe, is when the George Floyd thing. So 5 years ago.
5 years ago. Where was that? Was that in Minneapolis too?
That was in Minneapolis. That was probably like 4 or 5 blocks away from where the
where the shooting was.
Yeah. So this is where the shooting was, and this is where the George Floyd thing was.
Okay.
All right. So we can see like time and space. Like this is how the game is played. The game is played in time and space. And so when we begin to like decode, we're thinking in terms of like that level of like 2-dimensional reality of time and space. And then these, like, it's all like dimensional play. So anyway, so George Floyd, again, another neck wound. So we've got the neck wound of Charlie. We've got the neck wound of the Russian whose neck was sliced in Burning Man, and then the Ukrainian girl who was stabbed in the neck as well. And you know, like the neck is, if you're familiar with some of the the Freemasonic sort of symbology, like the guarding the neck and like the slicing of the neck. And it's also within Mormonism, like the symbols of the neck, without even getting into interpretation like that. That's just a key symbol. So we've got like George Floyd, death by neck. We've got the Minneapolis. We've got the George Floyd neck wound happened exactly 1923 days apart from the Burning Man guy, which is the year of the Catholic school. And you begin to see this relationship between all of these events, which the connections are just like, they're on the periphery. They're on the periphery. And it's important that they remain on the periphery, because when it remains on the periphery, it's absorbed by the subconscious.
Yes.
But it's not necessarily like analyzed. Like that's
not waking people. It's not necessarily waking people up consciously.
Right. Like it doesn't seem like anything. So I want to go and show this other thing, because this like cracked me up. So, all right. So this here is the Robin Westman right here, shooter of the Catholic school. And then this here is Tyler Robinson, the supposed shooter of the supposed shooting in Oregon, or in Utah, excuse me. So I'm looking at these guys and I'm like, I've seen them before. And I've seen these characters, I've seen these archetypes play out in 1999. So this is Robin, and I know this chin because Dylan from Columbine had the same friggin' chin.
Yep.
And then his co-shooter, Eric, Dylan and Tyler, they have an uncanny similarity. And if you've ever seen, like, when they do a reboot, like I think they just did
Eric and Tyler have a
Eric and Tyler. Yes, you could see they have this like connection, and it's like it's no different than what they do with TV and movies. Like when they like rewrite the story, they just released like a Freaky Friday reboot this year, and they kind of have the characters look like the previous characters, but they're a little bit different, and they're playing into certain archetypes.
This has been fantastic as usual, Mick Wann. Where can people find your stuff? Where can they follow you on social media? You mentioned the YouTube channel earlier, but if you could just sort of spit all that stuff out again.
So definitely, like the YouTube is probably where I put out content. I put out videos like maybe once every 2 weeks, like hour-long presentations where I go through all this sort of stuff. It's good for people who find this interesting, but it's also like I don't do this for like conspiratorial entertainment. I do this for a simple reason. It's becoming lucid in the dream and being able to disentangle from the matrix. Like these are skills. This is a way of meeting this realm of which is held in place by consciousness. So you could go to YouTube, watch all those videos. Also, you said in the very beginning, the gum tree. The Gum Road.
Yeah,
Gum Road. Thank you. I always call it Gumtree. So I've taught this course multiple times, which I call grounding consciousness. And it's astronomy, astrology, consciousness, conspiracy, and history. And the whole purpose of that is like to give a foundation of understanding what's going on. I've recently taken those courses, which were only done live and they're really intense. And it was like 10 hours. And I have edited that down into really like accessible modules. So those modules are now available online and you can download those. The modules are broken down into like 5 to 20-minute modules. And that's what's at the Gumroad. And I would highly encourage every single person, like if this resonates, if you want to understand, like you recognize that understanding the heavens is significant. Like whatever this place is, the heavens are the unifier of humanity. It's the only thing we all have equal access to. The true relationship is it'll give you your bearings.
I watched
your bearings.
I watched some of the ones you sent me, and it's really good the way you break it down simply. Like you kind of simplify it for everybody too, and start off sort of slower and go through it.
Build it slowly. So that can be done at Gumroad. I would recommend that. But then I also work with people one-on-one. I do astro chart readings. Like I'm a pretty skilled traditional astrological reader, but I will only do it for someone who wants to move off of like their story of who they are. I'll give someone an astrological reading if they're like, yes, I'm doing this because I need to hear my story told to me so that I can move off of that. Because most astrology just like reinforces the same false self story. So if you're interested in something like that, well then, or if you're interested in any like one-on-one mentorship, what's best to do is just like send me an email and we'll figure out what makes sense.
And that's in the show notes, the email.
And that's in the show notes. Yeah.
That's in the show notes. Michael Wann, thanks again. It's dark in the cave now.
This was a lot of fun. You guys are a great audience to work with. You ask good questions. You're incredibly intelligent. Like the way we see things, like we're really aligned. I don't always have that experience when I go on shows. So this has been a real pleasure for me.
Awesome, buddy. Yeah, we'll do it again after a few months. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely so.
All right, buddy. Awesome. Thanks.
And that's the end of the free version of the show, Grimerica Out Loud. We hope you guys enjoyed it. We get into a bunch of great stuff in the second half. Of course, if you guys want to check that out, head over to GrimericaOutlawed.ca today. Sign up. Not only can you support us and keep us in business, this is all we can do because, you get canceled nowadays for talking about the stuff we talk about. So if I go and try and get a real job, they're going to look at me like I'm crazy Nazi. So
yeah, we're pigeonholing ourselves.
We're unhireable. So check out GrimericaOutlawed.ca. $6 a month. Sign up today. Not only does it support us and keep us on the air, it also gets you an extension to this show. You get an extra 45 minutes or a half hour, however long this was. You get just as much. You get twice as much show for your buck. So sign up over there and do that. And that's how you support us. That's the best way to keep us in business. And you get all that extra content and the whole extra show. We do a whole extra show a week for us supporters, doing a roundup. So check that out. And of course, Grimerica.ca for our other podcast. Over 700 episodes over there. Contact at thecabin.com for trips and events. Adultbrain.ca for audiobooks and ebooks and print books and publishing books. Any of that stuff, all the above. And GrimericaCBD.com for all the other good stuff.
And A-List.
Oh, that's right. And A-List.ca for Canadian content and Grimerica.ca/rooms if that's what floats your boat. Of course, you can email us, Graham@Grimerica.com as well. But main thing is to sign up for Plus and support us. So GrimericaOutlawed.ca, sign up today. Other than that, we love you guys. Thanks for listening. And we will see you next week.
Who's gonna kill this sacred cow? You were never political anyhow. Since when did you start trusting in the government? Since when was it okay to ridicule and shame your neighbor? Your opinions have become as fickle as artificial flavors. What matters most to you? What the TV host told you to do? Or a moral compass that points points true north, oh true. Who's gonna kill this sacred cow? You were never religious anyhow. Since when did you kiss the ring on the hand of the Pope? Since when do we need pharmaceuticals to cope? Your soul has become, ever-loving soul has become as brittle as communion wafers. What matters most to you? What the Holy Ghost told you to do? Or a moral compass that points true north, oh true. I'm gonna kill this sacred cow. Bureaucrats think I'm non-essential anyhow. Since when has our culture become so lowbrow? It's all touchscreens, and nobody has any know-how. Your idea of fun is taking 1,001 photos of your duck face. Matters most to you what the celebrities post told you was cool, or a moral compass that points true north, oh true. I'm gonna kill this sacred cow. I'm gonna kill your 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 sacred cow. I'm gonna kill